Hello, welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. This is going to be a continuation of this book, The Case for UFOs, the Allende Letters, the Vero Edition by Morris Jessup. So Morris Jessup was an astronomer and an author, investigator, scientist. He wrote a book called The Case for UFOs. And apparently some entities, some people think aliens, some people think maybe just high-level initiates, Illuminati, Freemasons, people in the know, I guess edited or corrected his assumptions and some of the things in his book. And also in this book is the Philadelphia experiment, where they put microwave transmitters all around a ship, the Eldridge, I think, and turned them on, and the ship disappeared, and, as unbelievable as it may seem, apparently transported itself to several places around the world before returning with some of the humans half in and half out of the bulkheads, the steel plates. So what is reality? And what do UFOs and aliens and all that have to do with Freemasonry and Satanism? Well, for one, the Illuminati, secret mystery school of Babylon, Freemason, the top level, not the average Freemason citizen out there, your uncle, your brother, whatever, but the higher-ups, the Illuminati, the Zionism, the banksters, CEOs of huge corporations, the Jesuits. People in the know obviously know more than they're disclosing to the rest of us. So what are these so-called entities, whether they're material aliens or interdimensional ghost-type aliens, and are they in cahoots with the powers that be? And what does that have to do with the New Age and the New World Order, sky-spraying HARP transmitters, microwave transmitters, directed energy beam weapons apparently up in space that can slice a car in half, possibly take down the Twin Towers in 911, and obviously so much more. Probably vaporize a human. So we're up against some pretty interesting stuff with this, things going on in this new world, future. The future's here. I'm going to read a little bit of this and maybe it'll make sense. It's certainly an education for me. I left off at the end of chapter 2. I'm just starting chapter 3. Fascinating material. History Speaks, Chapter 3. Disappearing Ships and Crews. There are two purposes to be served in discussing the disappearances of ships and crews. First, we shall list enough of the available material to show that such phenomena have occurred, and second, we shall see what conclusions can be drawn and how it will serve our space thesis. The alien says, and they have these apparently three aliens or three beings identifying who says what by these notations on the bottom with the different markings underneath where my finger is. So when it says it's an alien, it's underlined by apparently whoever is speaking. And in this case, it looks like Mr. A. Yes, many, many times, more often than is recorded, Ulysses and crew believed suffered same faith. Ness 8. Wanderings thus were pure invention. So throughout history, there have been some very strange happenings involving disappearing ships and people. As many people are already aware, Bermuda Triangle, and so many more examples. The following account by Henry Galus is from Fate, I guess Fate magazine, volume X number 8. And the alien, this time it's Mr. B, Marie Celeste, had an extra compass in Captain's cabin. So apparently when these aliens, according to the material in this book, interact with humans throughout history, and likely maybe today there are some interesting aspects to this conversation, but if they were scanning a ship, or something they had called a measure marker, some kind of electromagnetic surveillance equipment, and if there was a compass aboard the ship, it would drive the aliens' equipment to malfunction, causing some serious destructive action. So you'll see that as we go here. There seemed to be everything left behind in the cabin, and I'm only reading my highlighted portions, so bear with me, as if left in a hurry, but everything in its place. I noticed the impression in the captain's bed as of a child having lain there. So they found the ship floating in the sea, and everybody was gone. The alien says, not a child, was another little man of Mu. And gravity is great strain on them. They tire easily and must rest often when on Terra. So whatever these aliens are, they're small, gravity tires them out, and they must rest often when on Terra. Except under seas. So apparently they can survive better under seas with less gravity. Moving on here. Then why had the Marie Celeste been abandoned? It was learned that her master had been Captain Benjamin Briggs. 9 others accompanied him, including his wife and daughter Sophie. Surely Briggs, an old sea master, would have done nothing to endanger his family. The destroyed compass was a clue, but there was no further evidence of violence. Superstitious seamen predicted. So apparently the alien says they break compasses, fearing that we may use more than one bar magnet and thus fly as they. Now, as an amateur scientist myself, with an electronic technology degree, working 10 years at a major aerospace company, I read that with a little fascination. The aliens are worried that, apparently, if we create some kind of compass device with more than one bar magnet, remember a compass has one little bar that turns around, so apparently if you take 2 bars or 3, we can fly as they. That's interesting. A compass card looks exactly like a flying saucer from the top, looking down on a large ship's binocular compass card floating as in liquid. An unworldly power cleared the Briggs deck. The tribunals scoffed. Ghost ships in the 19th century. Rumors stated that the current tragedy was only a continuation of misfortunes that dogged the Briggs since she was first launched in Nova Scotia. Whoever had touched her had suffered disappointments, financial losses, or worse. So I'm only reading my highlighted portions, just trying to throw in some of my commentary. Not trying to read all Jessup's book here, but in particular what the aliens said. Anyways, Jessup says that the Marie Celeste did exist as proven by subsequently recorded voyages after her release. On March 10, 1873, by the Gibraltar court and by the court records themselves. Apparently, the alien says alcohol fumes partly inebriated the whole crew, and LMs, I guess that's Lemurians, a little windy out here, were overhead. Drunk men, naturally, are not mentally paralyzed by freeze. They seized lines as they were starting to ascend. Hung on grimly, some fell on deck. LM ship stopped MC and took them off. So apparently the alien ship was beaming them aboard with some kind of levitation device. The men were drunk on the ship, the humans. They grabbed the lines to stop themselves from being pulled up. And some fell on the deck. The Lemurian ship stopped. MC, I guess that was the levitation device, and took them all off. So how true is this stuff? This is all documented material that Morris Jessup researched. All right, moving on. Morris Jessup says, again, there is always the possibility that the open seas provide an easy catching place. So Morris Jessup is surmising, guessing that some aliens are abducting these people. The alien says, ought to be the sea as natural home of the little bastards. So whoever the alien or entity who is making this comment, Mr. B, he's calling those little aliens little bastards. The little pricks come aboard at night and go wandering about the decks. Scares the crew, but no crewman, meaning one, ever says so, just quits drinking. So whatever these little creatures are, it causes these sailors to quit drinking. More down here, rescue ships from Dutch Sumatra and British Malaya rushed to the indicated location of the vessel in distress. They found her only 50 miles from the position given. Boats were put over the side to investigate. Maiden was moved. Radar direction, all finders, this is the alien speaking, are too accurate, ships too slow to move that far, so little time. So the name of the ship was called the SS Orange Maiden. The alien says the Maiden was moved. Radar directional finders are too accurate and ships too slow to move that far in so little time. Navigator trying to plot movement of ship. That's the alien saying that. But strangely, there's no sign of wounds or injuries on any of the bodies, Morris Jessup. The alien says suffocation, jammed freeze. Somebody slipped up on this one. Must have been a jammed freezer to kill all. Otherwise, the sparks would not have got hit so hard. So apparently the aliens have some kind of device to cause some kind of freeze of humans, to put them in some kind of interdimensional state. After quick conference, the would-be rescuers decided to put a tow line on the unlucky vessel and take her into port. But at that very moment, smoke and flames belched from the number 4 hold. The fire was immediately so hot and so widespread that it was impossible to subdue. The alien says, telepathic, eh? That sounds kind of Canadian, eh? The boarding parties hurriedly abandoned the doomed vessel and returned to the safety of their own ships. The alien says, more works of the little men, of Mu, and their forced ships. Radio men are little affected by freezing when in their shacks with sender turned on. Electro-resistance. So apparently our electromagnetic transmitters disable their freeze machine. Now apparently, like in Roswell and some other incidences of UFOs crashing, the theory is they crashed because the radar we use interferes with their anti-gravity devices on their ships, allowing them to fly in some kind of electromagnetic state. I suppose that makes sense. Alright, continuing on. Page 100. Some meteorologists and astronomers have suggested from time to time that ships and aircraft disappearing at sea may have been struck by meteors. The alien says, as a sailor, I say impossible for meteor. Presume men of Medan, like all others, pilot of aircraft, autos, ships, etc., saw sun blackout. This is important. In middle of day, as per deep freeze. This was an attack for reasons which I dread, if done by S-men, as here seems probable from description. So apparently when they have a deep freeze, whatever condition they can create, humans will see the sun black out. And if it was an attack, so apparently it's some kind of mode of attack by some kind of S-men aliens. Moving on, Jessup says, the New York Times of June 21, 1921, discusses the disappearances of 3 U.S. ships with such a dearth of information that piracy was suggested. So apparently there wasn't any piracy going on. A slightly damaged, this is 1953, damaged motor ship whose 5-man crew vanished mysteriously at sea was towed into Colombo today, still carrying plenty of food, water, and fuel. The alien says something else must have been missing. And I'm just reading my highlighted portions here and having a little conversation. Trying to make a point, which I think will be self-evident. Note the pattern again in this modern case. The broken mast is a key. This was a motor ship and carried no sails, presumably, but in any case was not dependent on sails. The damage aloft is a common feature of these events and somehow indicates activity above the ship, or at least above its deck. I think Ivan Sanderson, in his book, Invisible Residents, a lot of those Mayflower type ships, 1600s, 1500s, 1700s, when they got back to London, would file insurance reports to Lloyd's of London, and it was a lot of damage to the mast. So do these alien ships, apparently in Ivan Sanderson's book, they would come up out of the water and like flyboys of today like to have a little fun. They would buzz the ship and break the mast. I have multiple sources and years of researching this stuff. And remember, Kennedy wanted to come clean all this before he was killed. Apparently he had negotiated some deal with Russia, and together they were going to disclose some secrets that we all ought to know, maybe. Another training ship, British, the Atlanta, set sail early in 1880 from Bermuda with 250 cadets and sailors aboard, and was not heard of again. Two things strike me. the year 1880, a year of unexplained mysteries, in the Bermuda Caribbean area where mysterious disappearances are many. So apparently, whoever these alien beings are, from continuing reading this material you shall see, they harvest, or they need to abduct, recruit humans for their workforces in the underground, under-ocean cities. The Danish training ship Copenhagen sailed from Montevideo on December 14, 1928, with 50 cadets and sailors aboard, and all disappeared. Jessup says, "May I suggest that there seems to be a tendency for selectivity towards sailing vessels? And don't overlook the fact that this strong ship disappeared in the era of wireless and radio, as in the case of so many airplanes where radio operators are constantly on duty. This ship not only disappeared without trace, but met a fate so instantaneous that it was impossible to radio for help or to announce impending disaster." The alien says, "Don't know about Copenhagen, may have sighted home ship in the water." So if you sight one of these gigantic motherships in the ocean, I guess the aliens don't want people telling the world, so they abduct the people. Making ready for ascent. So apparently they're in the ocean, they're going to ascend. And so many highly trained eyes could not be permitted to tell whatever they had seen. This is what the alien says. So they are on the Greek ark now, yet feel that Copenhagen is still being held intact. Windjammer sailors are hard fighters and prove good sport to the Lemurians, LMs. Later, when pacified, they are good company, make good space sailors. Deep space is not for every man. So how much of this stuff is true? What's it got to do with Freemasons, Illuminati, Jesuits, Zionists, overthrowing all the nations in the Middle East, 911, and the New Age and the New World Order? There must be a tie-in here. If the elites are incommunicado with these aliens, and maybe they have been all along, maybe they are the aliens. Shapeshifters, or why do they always wear those hoodies, even in statues in downtown cities? They got something to hide? Only a few types can take it very long. Most of these type men are sailors, used to long voyages. So apparently sailors are good people for these aliens to abduct, because they can deal with the hardship of long space voyages. According to this stuff here written in a book by Jessup and aliens, just stuff to think about. With future books, keeping this in the back of my mind helps me to draw other conclusions. The SS Fort Salisbury, the second officer, Mr. A.H. Raymer, had on October 28, 1902, longitude, latitude, XX here, which is a few hundred miles off the coast of the French Equatorial Africa in the South Atlantic, had been called to by the lookout. So the second officer was called by the lookout at 3:05 a.m. in the morning, who reported that there was a huge dark object bearing lights in the sea ahead. 2 lights were seen, and the steamer passed a bulk of an estimated length of 500 to 600 feet, which seemed to be slowly sinking. So some gigantic ship maybe was descending. The captain was interviewed and said, "I can only say that Mr. Raymer is very earnest on the subject, and has, together with the lookout and the helmsman, seen something in the water of a huge nature," he specified. The alien says, home ship in process of taking on enough ballast to get to the Atlantic chain cities. So are there some chains cities under the ocean in the Atlantic? What's that got to do with overpopulation of the Earth, sustainability, biodiversity, global warming, climate change? In other words, all these rules so that they can increase the police state. Population reduction. Do these aliens have anything to do with this? Are they in cahoots with some elites and think they really are better than the rest of us? Alright, moving on. About 7 a.m. on a bright sunny morning in 1850, the people living in the vicinity of Easton's Beach, Newport, Rhode Island, rubbed their eyes in disbelief. They saw a large sailing vessel heading head-on for shore in disaster. At first believed it was an optical illusion, but as the vessel drew closer, they heard its weather-beaten sails flapping like shrouds in the stiff breeze. And they shouted, "It's the Seabird." Frantically, they tried to wave her from her course, but the vessel came on. So they had a big ship just sailing straight for the beach. Then miraculously, as if lifted by giant hands, the vessel majestically berthed herself on the shore undamaged. You can't make this stuff up, but you can go look it up. Alright. So the watchers, most of them God-fearing fishermen, crossed themselves and like a funeral procession boarded the ship, their hearts filled with fear. The search was made for Captain John Durham and his crew, but no sign of them was found. A look of bewilderment covered the faces of the searchers when they crowded into the small galley and found coffee boiling on the stove and an elaborate breakfast laid out on the table. They also found that the crew's quarters smelled strongly of tobacco smoke, but there was no clue to the crew's whereabouts. So you would think when the ship landed on there, as the alien says here, should have spilled, you would think all that stuff, the coffee, the food, and everything else would have spilled over. Some gigantic hand lifted it and set it up on the beach. So the alien says there's some more talk here. Food ships or home ships? So were these crewmen abducted only minutes from arriving at the home port? The vessel's holds were unloaded. Tropical hardwoods, pitch pine, sacks of coffee, and some dye woods were transported to her designated port of call. Then an attempt was made to refloat the ship, but the Seabird dug deeper in the sand. The alien says she was pushed in deeper. So apparently these alien craft were still in control of this ship, but you couldn't see them. Alright, moving on. Soon after, a night gale blew itself into a violent storm. The wind howled around the neck of Rhode Island, kicking up the sea. The sea in turn threw mountainous waves at the Seabird, lifting her from her sand anchorage and tossing her about. So a storm came in. So after the storm was over, the locals went out to see what had happened to the ship, expecting to see it pounded to smithereens, but instead the vessel was gone. Like her ill-fated captain and crew, she had vanished without a trace and was never seen or heard of again. Fate magazine, April 1953. There are really two important events to this story, Jessup says. The disappearance of the crew can be considered one event, or certainly as one distinct phase of one event. The final disappearance of the ship is another, and perhaps the initial breaching of the boat without damage is something to be signaled out for attention. and more stuff here, but the alien says, experience has taught that the gear, clothes, and supplies and comforting atmosphere of the ship for its crew are far more desirable than a froze crew with nothing but fear to guide their actions when they are unfrozen. Of course, if no one is telepathic on board, there is some difficulty, cannot sense friendlinesses. So if you're not telepathic, you can't sense that the aliens are friendly. And I guess if you can say that abducting the sailors and their ship, taking them God knows where as an act of friendliness, well, there you have it. Okay, moving more on to Mr. Jessup. But in this case, the disappearance of the crew is but one phase, and there is evidence of continued application of intelligence from above, as if the force which abducted the crew might have some element of compassion for the owners of the cargo. The unfortunate ship was brought carefully to shore, gently grounded high on the sand, miraculously, as if lifted by giant hands. What better description can there be of a ship being levitated by an intelligently directed force from above? Moving on, page 106. Jessup says, in the disappearances we certainly have an imitation, however slight, of levitation, of something operating from above, with great and decisive power, and in suddenness of action. Whatever it may be, it seems to favor isolated places and ships. There is without a doubt an element of our old friend selectivity and perhaps segregation. There is also a suggestion of ruthlessness, selective ruthlessness. There is something of evasion and secretiveness. All are attributes of intelligence. Well, geez, Louise, this sounds like all the secret goings-on of the Freemason lodges, York Rite, Scottish Rite, Illuminati, Zionism, Jesuits, and so many other mystery school of Babylon, Luciferic, mystery school of Babylon, societies, temples, lodges, groups, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger Group, Club of Rome, our politicians, leaders. Something going on that we, the citizens, are not aware of. Hence me doing these videos. The story is told by C.F. Taffman of Ream of the Air, of a ship which was expected to arrive in New York in colonial days. One Sunday afternoon, after a violent storm, she was floating in the air. Every spar so clearly visible that there was no doubt about the identity of the image depicted in the sky. So some force was carrying this ship away in the air. The alien says, air too cleared up of dust, and etc. After storm at sea, clouds show whole conveys coming over horizon, not air, especially such cleared air. Disappearances close to port without a trace, and that's a repeating tale along the Atlantic seaboard, Jessup says. The alien says, there's more here where Jessup says, it is entirely within the realm of possibility that this ship was seen in the process of being levitated. And the alien says, tried that with XXXXX, and I on XXXX, and he on XXX was drunk enough to slip out of the freeze, and he made them know it in no uncertain terms. They put us down and then unfroze the crew, who to this day do not remember it. They can't. Mr. M was the chief mate, Hatteras, 1943. Perhaps they detected field activity of Navy DE, which was close by, before testing an invisibility experiment gadget. So apparently they were interacting here with the Philadelphia experiment, which was going on in 1943. Alright, moving on. Teleportation or kidnapping. A malaria-infected person, not desirable to LMs. So apparently this person was abducted and released. The alien says a malaria-infected person, not desirable to the LMs, Lemurians. It is a deadly, fearful plague to them. This man may have had it, and also for this reason was let go. Alright, moving on. On the morning of October 25, 1593, relates Don Luis Gonzalez Obregon in Las Calles de Mexico, a soldier suddenly appeared in the Plaza Mayor of Mexico City. A soldier dressed in the uniform of the regiment which at that moment was guarding the walled citadel of Manila in the Philippine Islands. So out of nowhere in Mexico, a town called Plaza Mayor of Mexico City, a soldier just appeared, boom, who was supposed to be on duty in the citadel of Manila in the Philippine Islands. Moving on, so you got a guy who just appears out of nowhere in a plaza in Mexico, supposed to be on duty in the Philippines. Had to move my little production apparatus indoors, so it was getting a little breezy outside. So anyways, they arrested the soldier. They thought he had gone AWOL. The Holy Tribunal of the Inquisition took charge of the soldier. He could not tell them how he had been transported from Manila to Mexico, only that it had been in less time than it takes a cock to crow. Nor could he tell them how it had come to pass that Mexico City was buzzing with the news of the governor's death even before it was known in Manila. The alien says, time of battle, each inch of the way. Jessup says, at order of the Holy Tribunal, the soldier was returned to the Philippines for further investigation into the mysterious matter. Irrefutable witnesses came forward to swear that the soldier had been on duty in the island city on the night of October 24th, just as it had been proved beyond doubt that on the following morning he had been apprehended in the plaza of Mexico City, more than 9,000 miles away. Alien says, froze, or semi-froze, time not recognized. So whenever you go into this, maybe it's an interdimensional portal that they call some kind of freeze. Also, another word they use is called stasis. You go into stasis and out of stasis. Jessup says, this case of this precipitic soldier is one where we can tie down both ends of the teleportation. So is teleportation possible? And again, I keep hating to beat this topic up, but like this other book I've been going over and I'm going to continue going over, the Skull and Bones and all these secret mystery school of Babylons, the secrecy going on behind the scenes, the planning, which is going to affect the future of we the people. And apparently they think there's too many of us. The alien says, peripatetic, my eye, whatever that word means, he fought like a madman and could not be taken aboard. So he was let down, and they kept his rifle, though. So the aliens carried him from the Philippines to Mexico City, and he fought like mad, and would not be taken aboard. And Jessup says, if indeed it is telepathic. Another guy was disappeared, who his friends came outside. All they could hear was, "Help, help, it got me." This pitiful plea, ending in the piercing scream, brought friends running to Oliver Lynch's home in the bright moonlit night, that he was not to be seen, although they could hear his voice, growing fainter, calling for help from 100 feet or more above their heads. "Help me, help." This is Jessup saying this. The facts of the case are clearly written down for everyone to see in the public records of the South Bend, Indiana, and have been attested by level-headed persons not given to delusions, mass hysteria, or suggestion. These witnesses included lawyers, Reverend Samuel Mililu, the local Methodist minister, responsible citizens who actually witnessed the weird disappearance. And I'm only reading my highlighted portions, so you can go get the book. Give credit where credit is due. I'm not trying to do an audiobook. I'm trying to make a point that there is enough evidence of mysterious happenings on planet Earth, on the ground, in the ocean, in the air, to make it believable that there is some other forces existing on planet Earth, other than we humans, who are completely unaware of the existence of these other entities, human or not, and with their higher knowledges and abilities. That's my point. So if the powers that be that run our country, rigging the elections, plotting against the people, Obama using executive orders to increase gun controls, the government buying 450 hollow point bullets, staffing up and building FEMA camps all over the United States and similar camps in Canada and Europe. The last 100 years having a program called Aliyah, which was bringing Jewish people only to Israel, some biblical prophecy, meanwhile destroying the buildings and the cities and the governments of the Arabs, killing them, and then the ones they're not killing, they're shipping to Europe and the United States and likely elsewhere. It has to have some tie-in with these entities or beings, with their knowledge and the secrecy of the government and the Black Ops programs, RAND Corporation, and so many others. Jessup says, altogether, perhaps 20 people were gathered around the piano, singing hymns and gay holiday songs. Nobody foretold of the grim tragedy which was to come. "Help me, it's got me," Oliver's terror-stricken voice called again, this time from a position above their heads. With panic in their hearts, some of the people dashed back into the house, while others continued to call to the voice above their heads, which was still moaning, "Help me, help." Anxiously, they continued to scan the moonlit sky, but there was nothing to be seen. And if it was one incident or 2 incidences or 3 incidences, I've got volumes of books on oddities and incidences recorded throughout man's history. Look at the stuff in the Bible. Jesus casting out unclean spirits, healing people from blindness, being deaf, raising the dead. There's something more to reality than we all know. At 10 o'clock, the horror of the ghastly situation became all the more apparent when 8 or 9 people in the yard heard the voice calling to them from above their heads. Once more, it uttered a soul-tinging plea for help. After that, the voice was never heard again. So then it was noticed that Oliver's tracks had stopped about 225 feet from the house, about half the distance to the well, nothing to indicate that a fracas of nature had occurred. So they followed his tracks, and just like in several other cases in this book, the tracks just stop. The alien said both first. It's when a tractor hit him, and upon sight of LM of receiving port, said they. So apparently the aliens, whatever they are, Lemurians, according to these editors of Morris Jessup's book, one called Jemmy, one Mr. A, and one Mr. B, that they have something called an attractor. And it can literally lift, I guess, a human or a cow, which has been reported numerously, and we've had the slaughtered cows out west, that some of their organs were professionally removed and all their blood disappeared. Never mind all the UFO and alien books I have, which I will continue to research. And if we can remember all this information, maybe it'll tie together, and together we can all figure this out. All right, Jessup says, an event similar to the strange disappearance of Oliver Lurch happened here about 25 years earlier. This would make it around 1865. The alien says, and I'm not reading everything here, Po great, wanna equal fish, natok lingo. So a dozen men gathered here for the winter cutting pine. Just after dark, a dozen men finished their supper at the hotel kept by Uri Hammersley and seated themselves on the hotel porch to enjoy an after-dinner smoke. The alien says, Po great, wanna equal fish, natak lingo. So here's what happened. As they sat talking, they noticed a drunken man, a stranger no one had ever seen before, staggering along the road in front of the hotel. The stranger, cursing himself as drunks often do, passed the hotel without stopping, continued down the road. After he had gone about 200 yards, he suddenly began to shout angrily, "Damn you, let me go." The men from the hotel porch ran down to the spot, and Kellys, who lived on a farm an equal distance beyond, came running from the opposite direction. The stranger was nowhere to be seen, but everyone could hear him still shouting, "Damn you, let me go," from overhead. His voice got fainter and fainter, and finally stopped. The alien says, no more drunks will be picked up after old Potter. His breath killed two. So did the drunk's breath kill two aliens? So just moving on a little more. In the crowd there were men who could track deer or bear all day on bare ground. But not one of them could ever did find a trace of the missing man. The alien says Po equals great, Mola equals bird, natak. So apparently maybe there's these giant birds in the Midwest, like prehistoric pterodactyls. I don't know. That's what they're saying here. Up to 100 years ago, the Indians stoutly maintained that the thunderbird, a bird that could carry a full-grown deer or a man, still exists in the United States. In Maine, the Indians called it pomala. Bird equals primitive description. Just reading the book. All right, in translating thunderbird from the Indian languages, the word eagle was used. Well, eagle is a big symbol with the Freemasons, Illuminati, even the Russians and Rome. Just saying. The average American, if he saw a gigantic bird carrying off a calf, would be afraid to tell of it, because he would know that no one would believe him. Or if a pilot saw one, who would believe his story of a bird with a 25 or 30-foot wingspan? The alien says, SM ships Thunderbirds, or disabled LM scout ships, LM would be Lemurians, both made considerable noise. Old type ships made much noise, heard at a certain wave distance. So the alien says some more stuff here. Father, aviator, diplomat, sailor, soldier, and lawyer, and common men, all were necessarily to LMs, Lemurians. Scrutiny of our too rapidly growing culture. So apparently these LMs living on Earth, maybe under the oceans, needed fathers, aviators, diplomats, sailors, soldiers, lawyers, and common men. Were all necessary to them. It says that here. I just read and report. No man wearing hobnail boots or cleats or on shoes has ever been known to have been stolen. Neither a man in a cave under earth. So apparently if you have shoes with nails in them, metal, their attractor can't scoop you up. A person. When I am hunting in woodland, I make my mind a blank, and always get animals at close range. Whole M can quiet his mind thusly, so it is that all animals are silent when they are near. Now, if you don't know this, there have been many videos on YouTubes and books and stuff like that about disappearing humans all the time. I'll get one of the books. I've got about 500 books. But there are whole libraries of these kinds of stories documented. The Mothman Prophecies, John Keel. I haven't read this book yet. Should be a fascinating read. For 13 months, the entire town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was gripped by a dark terror that culminated in a tragedy that made the headlines all over the world. Homes throughout the little town were plagued with unearthly noises and ghostly manifestations, while mysterious aerial lights traveled silently overhead, seemingly on a regular schedule. So here we are reading Morris Jessup's books, apparently edited by some entities who know a whole lot more than the rest of us. Another book, I've got many of these. I've got enough material to read for the rest of my life. Into the Shadows. So you got these authors like Troy Taylor writing books like this. What bizarre artifacts and lost relics have been found that could completely rewrite American history? What haunting mystery hangs over the last colony of Roanoke? What happened to the crew of the Marie Celeste? That was in this book. What strange curse takes the lives of those who search for the lost Dutchman? What happened to Ambrose Bierce, Dillinger, John Wilkes Booth? So all kinds of strange things in history. The Soul Hustlers. According to one video I was watching the other day, this thing with the New Age, satanic New Age cult, Theophist Society, anti-Christianity, promoting the gay agenda. I know some people say, don't be preaching religion, Rick. But apparently, somebody's trying to snatch souls. And according to Jesus and God, he's trying to save souls. So there's more to this reality than we all know. And apparently there's some cosmic battle going on. I've got books called The Cosmic Battle and many books with that kind of name. Just saying, there's all kinds of material out there. And if it doesn't even get a little bit more weird, I've gone over this before. But Jim Mars, PSI spies. So apparently the government has programs, black ops projects going on, where they can put men in chairs and put them in trances with hypnotism or drugs, and they can leave their body in remote view and spy for the government. And corporations are into this, and apparently it's involved in witchcraft and the Illuminati. This isn't just made up stuff I'm talking about. Mars uncovers the military program that turns soldiers into psychic spies. Find out what happens when the psychic soldiers use their abilities to unlock the mysteries behind UFOs. Time travel and the assassination of JFK, and the Soviet plot to kill Ronald Reagan. Praise for alien agenda. The most entertaining and completely overview of flying saucers and their crew in years, that was said by the Publishers Weekly. You may find yourself watching the skies a little bit more intently and ever checking under the bed before you go to sleep. Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And of course, Edgar Cayce on reincarnation, many mansions. Considered one of the greatest psychics in the world, tells all. Has thousands of microfilms filmed with the foundation of the psychic research at Virginia Beach testify on Cayce's ability to diagnose, prescribe, and cure the ills of people whose names and locations he was given, but whom he had never seen. Known as the Miracle Man of Virginia Beach, his successors astonished medical authorities and the world. So here I am talking about this book. And sharing with these videos. And paying attention to citizens downtown, wherever I go. I went over to the beach in North Carolina this last year. This is March 2016. And I'm not going to name the beach. It's too embarrassing for the people there. But there are humans, apparently, many of them in the USA, that are just a bit stupid. And that concerns me. And I think the people behind the scenes running things, whether it be the Illuminati, witchcraft, plotters, the Zionist Jesuits for a new world order, or even alien beings, if they're really here. But like this book says, between the fluoride, the drugs, and the educational system, they really have dumbed down America. And it's visible wherever you go. And that's why I do these videos, for one thing, to give people a shortcut to think. Because apparently these people bent on this New Age, New World Order, stealing the resources from we citizens of the United States, and even diluting our own citizenship by shipping over the millions, if it's that many, at least, of people from the Middle East, from a dozen countries in Africa, that they are on purposely removing those people, killing them or shipping them out. Why are they depopulating that whole region? What do they have planned? Part of what I understand is Israel will be the main location. Jerusalem maybe will be the where they rule the world from Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv will be the financial controlling site for the world. Just like Tex Mars said in his material, not Jim Mars here, in the newsletter I got in the mail a couple years ago, where it says that most major corporations have Jewish CEOs. So I'm scratching my head. I said, that can't be. I looked it up, and Tex Mars was correct. So what do these people think that makes them better CEOs for ruthless corporations and governments and other military organizations that would do things to human beings that's despicable, inhuman, immoral, horrendous. I guess you probably couldn't get a Christian guy to make those decisions and take those actions. So in other words, apparently these people are predators. So we people, they call us cattle, goyim, sheep. Masonic people call us profane. H.G. Wells says we're animals not to be trusted. And with this material here from these Skull and Bones, the order, intentionally infiltrating everything from the Historic Society, Education Society, everything. Trying to dumb down the people and putting fluoride and other chemicals and drugs and liquor and all that into society via the CIA and all these wars to keep the people in a more zombie-like state. I say all that because when I'm reading this material, and I know that the general population, like when I went to the beach in North Carolina last summer, and the people running around acting like morons, whole groups of families, it was just a sight to see. You'd think, I don't want to insult and say where some of these kind of people might be coming from. This is 2016. We're supposed to be a civilized society. So my point to this conversation is, the people out there need to wake up, shake it off. Become alert to what's going on. Look at this election offering us Hillary or Donald Trump. Which number one, Hillary, or demon number one, Trump? And don't tell me Trump's a nice guy. He admits he's not a nice guy. Hillary, go look up Larry Nichols' interview with Lisa Haven or Alex Jones. Larry Nichols was the Clintons' handler. And I think he's admitted to even killing people for them. But their drug involvement with the drugs in Arkansas and Trump's, casinos and all the stuff he's been involved with. So we got these choices, and the people are just rioting and fighting each other. Some of them feverishly believing in the Democratic side, Hillary. And others out there, Make America Great Again, are going for Trump. When it's all a ruse and you're reading this stuff that I'm going over here and putting it into context, you've got to admit that people need to wake up. You can't even have a conversation with people on these topics. So anyways, no man wearing knob heel boots or cleats on shoes has ever been known to have been stolen. So whoever these beings are, they admit they steal people. Neither a man in a cave or under earth. When I am hunting in woodland, I make my mind a blank and always get animals at close range. So if you make your mind a blank, apparently the animals can't detect you. So animals are kind of telepathic, I believe. Whole M can quiet his mind thusly, so it is that all animals are silent when they are near. If a man can keep his mind as a lifeless clod, he can easily escape detection, get my speech right here, from the LMs or the SMs in this way. So these entities editing Jessup's book call the entities out there LMs, which I believe is the Lemurians, and SMs. In this way, they can feel you out in the country, in cities, listen to birds. If birds don't sing, be ready. A lot of people must know that when all of a sudden all the birds stop chirping and the bugs start making noise, should be reason for alarm. Further proof booklet, Lo Taos, By the Way of Life, is a mentor bode by R.B. Blankney, page 27, bottom. So I guess I got to get that book. Jessup says, I am interested in Mr. Kramer's comments about the Indians and the Thunderbird. The alien says, see full-grown mummified little man in vault in Casper, Wyoming, do not touch. So apparently there's a lot of physical evidence to something more than we humans existing on this planet, which we already know, like the Sphinx and the pyramids in Egypt and the big stones in Baalbek, Lebanon. Eric von Donivich's book, The Gold of the Gods, the caves in Ecuador. Apparently underground cave entrances in the Amazon. Peru, everybody knows about the Machu Picchu lines and all the cities way up high on the Andes. The Easter Island way out in the ocean with those gigantic statues. And ruins in the Philippines and turtle mounds all the way up the Mississippi to the Great Lakes, where apparently the Mayans way back then were mining for copper and tin, and had settlements all the way from the Yucatan, across the Gulf, up the Mississippi to the Great Lakes. My question is, who knew about all these technologies? Obviously the ancient Mayans didn't know what they were doing. They were just working for whoever told them to do it. Hopi Indians, all kinds of historical information. The book I read by Frank Waters, where apparently before the Great Flood, Noah's Flood, these beings of some type came and helped build underground facilities to help the Hopi Indians survive the flood. And apparently this is the story told by lots of natives all over the world about being assisted prior to the Great Flood. Not just Noah and his ship saving the animals, but apparently tribes from all over the world were assisted. FYI. Alright, moving on. The alien says, I'm not reading everything here, having resisted this of them myself, telepathic control, only resisted by another telepath, darn tough on me. I am only partly telepathic, but can set call barriers. If ever see LM swimming about again, I'll grab him. Alright, Jessup says, in the sand around the plane, we're seeing footprints. Apparently a plane disappeared in 1924. It was over the Arab desert, Arab hostility. Pilot officer Stewart, Lieutenant Day were sent from the British headquarters. So they disappeared. And they found the plane sitting there in the desert. In the sand around the plane were seen footprints of Day and Stewart. They were traced side by side to some 40 yards from the machine. Then, as suddenly as they had come to the brink of a cliff, the marks ended. So apparently these people landed a perfectly good plane in the desert, out there in the Middle East. And when they found the plane, they found the little tracks 40 yards away, and then just stopped in midair. I mean, they didn't return or go left or right or nowhere. They just vanished, as if somebody used an attractor and sucked them up into the air. The alien says, came to LM ship, hovering a few feet off ground. So the two airmen saw the LM ship hovering above the ground. LMs wanted to know about the mode of flight, so apparently the Lemurians were interested in the plane the two men were flying, so brought them aboard. Their progeny proved to be of good stock and are highly regarded undersea explorers or sovereignty men. LMs were in stasis, thus not visible. So, again, reading my little material here and using my little techie mind, So when it says here, the LMs, the Lemurians, and their ship was in stasis, thus not visible. So keep all this in the storage bank of the brain. So when I am reading other books and putting two and two together, what do these elites from Yale who go to the Skull and Bones, Scrolling Key, or Wolf's Head, conspiring in secret on doing activities all over the world, keeping stuff from we the citizens, and even furthering the lowering of the IQ and making we citizens lethargic and more zombie-like, mind-controlled. This seems to be intentful. All right, Jessup says, and he walked around the other side of the horses and vanished. So apparently there was a Benjamin Birthhouse, 1809, who was returning from Vienna, where he had been a representative of the British government. He stopped in a small town of Perlsburg, Germany, and walked around his carriage and poof, disappeared. The alien says, felt LM presence by PSI, psychic abilities. So this is like anybody else, you know, all of a sudden you sense somebody's there, but you can't see them. It's like when you stare at somebody, people seem to pick up on that and turn around. We are more than we think we are. So the guy was suspicious. He sensed something, was suspicious, but did not know of what. He was indignant, but became good sport and well-liked by the LMs. So wherever they take these people, apparently it's another kind of a society. And they live lives, and apparently the LMs like this guy that they abducted from his previous reality. So, well, how about a little bit more here? The sun looks like it's going down. So I guess I'll stop right here and continue this video tomorrow when there's more light. Alright, continuing on. Teleportation or kidnapping. The case for the UFOs and the edits in the book by some entities, aliens or not, we don't know. But they seem to know something the rest of us don't know. So Caspar Hausen entered the town of Nuremberg, Germany on Whit Monday, May 1828. Most accounts agree that he had poor control of his legs as he walked. About 16 or 17 years old, he knew nothing at all of the accoutrements of civilized living, even trying to pick the flame of a candle. So he appeared at the gates, Nuremberg, Germany, out of nowhere. He couldn't walk. He had trouble wobbling while he walked. Not used to gravity, it appears. And he knew nothing of fire. He tried to touch the flames. So either he suffered from complete amnesia, or practically his entire life had been spent in solitary confinement, or its equivalent. The alien says, Caspar and no gravity were a problem. His legs were weak from lack of it. So wherever these aliens had him, the gravity is less. So when you go back to Earth on the surface, apparently it's quite detrimental to your ability to walk, which is a similar problem, so they say, when people went up in the space station and stayed for a period of time. They lost their muscle tone to handle gravity. Caspar could talk. This is the alien speaking. Caspar could talk a complete language, but none of Germany's best linguists could define it. He did not. So they thought he couldn't talk, but he just knew a different language. He did not lack mentality, worried, had kids, spoke good kraut for a while. So my point of all this is this stuff is documented, researched by Morris Jessup. I've got the books. We'll take a look at them. But apparently there have been oddities and strange occurrences happening on Earth since documented history. Even in the Bible. Etched in stone on monuments all over the world. All right, moving on. On September 23, 1880, again those incredible 1880s, Land, a farmer and prominent landowner living near Gallatin, Tennessee, returned home from a business trip. After greeting his family, he started across an 8-acre field to inspect his blooded horses. Right there, in full view of 5 persons, Lang's wife and 2 children, Peck and his friend, Lang vanished in a field which was devoid of trees, boulders, or any sort of cover. A field covered with grass and without caves, bogs, abandoned wells, or other chasms. In fact, a later geological survey showed his entire field was underlaid at a depth of a few feet with solid stratum of limestone. So there are people on one end of the field seeing him in a carriage, 2 guys. And then there's people at his house, wife and kids. He walks out to the middle of the field and disappears. Alien says, vortices, nodes, dead spots, traps, all the same things. So I don't know if you've ever seen a dust devil, a small little tornado when you're in the Midwest or somewhere of dust. Like tornadoes, but small little ones. Those are vortices. Or when you pull the plug on your bathtub and you see the water going down the drain in a circle. Vortices. So apparently there are some energy vortices which are traps, and maybe they can transport people away from a location. The case has been the subject of endless speculation, but no one has ever found a trace of David Lang. And there remains only the affidavit of Lang's daughter and the statements of the other witnesses that Lang simply vanished while crossing an open field. The alien says, E equals MC, here applied proof shown by use of converter, Feld, in action harmless. So Jessup says, I submit that capture by a space contraption for purposes beyond our ken is the only truly satisfactory answer. The alien says, Lang did XXX dematerialize, XXX swept up so quick. So maybe they had one of those invisible craft in stasis, as we've been reading in this book, with one of those grabber energy devices, a vortex, and it sucked him right up into the ship. That's what it says here, so the alien says. The same for nerd, plants, water, rocks, etc. Casper was a problem, a result of crossbreeding that for once failed. He had no gills and grew much too large for his old environment. He had to be dumped. So apparently, that guy we just talked about, Casper, who showed up, who couldn't walk on his legs and couldn't talk, and they thought he was touching a flame, the alien said he didn't adapt to the other environment and he had to be dumped. LM's Lemurians, Muorians, or little men, were forced by their size and by the fact of their gills to dig deep holes in rock where not only could titanic edifices be raised, welded and cut and sculptured to their leader's honor, but where they could live with gravity. Water was to fill the quarry. Holes in water is the best natural gravity neutralizer known to mammals or fish. So water is a gravity neutralizer. Interesting. Here they could sleep and rest and be more acclimated to gravity, while they also built temples in other terrestrial places, or XXXX. So the plan was to have been S-men broke it all up. So the LMs, the Lemurians, were building some facility that was suitable for their gravity problems, and the S-men, whoever they are, broke it all up. Jessup says, "It is not within the scope of this book to show that a civilization of single origin covered this planet some tens of thousands of years ago, perhaps hundreds of thousands. Such a case can be made without too much difficulty, in spite of the anti-Atlanteans who have a phobia against it. And we can show that there have been at least two principal waves of civilization on Earth. All of the centers of civilization and cultural renaissance, recognized by present-day anthropologists, India, Peru, Yucatan, Egypt, Babylonia, Greece, China, Rome, England, and others, are but the reviving remnants of an empire and civilization which colonized the world 100,000 years ago." So obviously, if you look at the monuments all over the world, there was great civilizations all over the world before the Great Flood. And if you ever go into the mountains, I live in the Appalachian Mountains now, and sediment would say, like the layers of the pages in this book, that the earth and everything else, sediment would be flat. Things as gravity, drainage of rock or silt or stuff blowing in the wind would be flat. But if you go to the mountains, you'll notice that the sedimentary levels are at angles, even like this almost, where the whole mountain was turned up on its side. All over the world, that's how they are. So we have had some earth crusting upheavals. I guess the big question is, what causes that? We will learn some of that here in this book. So, in it are some traces of the archaic original master culture, and perhaps through India, Tibet, Egypt, and Middle America, there are some tenuous links between our immature revival and the parent past. And remember when in the first part of this book, events like seemingly like meteors coming from space or major upheavals in the earth were apparently caused by these ancient beings having wars with each other and some very unusual weapons. Just another possible answer. And again, what's that have to do with some of the realities we're experiencing today, with the threats of pole shifting, earthquakes, volcanoes, Planet X, Nibiru, the Destroyer, plagues, World War III, and all the other intentional changes as we've discovered reading this book, which I will continue. America's secret establishment. I go further and say the world's secret establishment from my experience and my research. The alien says, "A thorn in the ostrich's head pains so continually that it hide it in the sand." So an ostrich has a pain in the head, so he sticks it in a hole in the sand. We all know that old saying. Yet it pains it still. So Jessup says, all data in conflict with this basic assumption are rejected by definition. Many of the so-called erratics cease to be erratics by the simple expedient of admitting the real authority of human culture upon the earth. Most of the perpetual squabble over whether Asians settle America or American colonized Asia are painlessly dissolved by merely extending the time scale back a few thousand years, and perhaps accepting a new working theory to the effect that all present cultures are traceable to a common origin. The alien says, I do not know much about the ancient LM colonies. So they made notes under Jessup's theories and discussions. Certain characteristics of some of the stonework bespeak origin in a single widespread civilization, highly developed in some way, but not mechanical in the same sense as ours of today. And apparently a lot of people are aware there are pyramids discovered everywhere from Alaska to the Yucatan, Bosnia area, Greece, Egypt, China, India, the world over. Apparently they had this pyramidal technologies. The alien says, cut with oversized measure marker on all power, i.e. cutter. So apparently Jessup was discussing in the book here, the manner or method of their carving is material to another report. So he was wondering how they cut those big stones. The alien says, cut with oversized measure marker. So it sounds to me like it's some kind of intense laser beam or something. Jessup says, in many areas we find evidence of stone blocks of unbelievable weight being quarried more or less casually, moved considerable distances, and then lifted into place. This common factor connects pre-Inca Peru with Easter Island in the starting and undeniable way, and seems to tie in the Middle East, the Orient, Africa, and maybe Polynesia. The alien says, block and tackle unknown to these people, mechanical lifting thusly not feasible, don't know. So they didn't do mechanical lifting. They used some kind of force field, anti-gravity field. Thought I'd take a moment and look at some strange things. Considering Jessup's book, and these entities who are apparently abducting people and have high technologies, meanwhile, here on Earth, the people behind the scenes, Freemasons, Illuminati, Jesuits, Kabbalah people, witchcraft, Zionists, Mystery School of Babylon, which is over there in Egypt. Babylon means gateway to the gods. So why are they overthrowing all the governments, bombing all the buildings, killing lots of people, displacing them, sending them to Europe or America and elsewhere? What's going on? So I bought this book years ago, Mysterious Monuments by Tex Mars. Look at these creatures. Could these creatures be some kind of aquatic creatures from the ocean depths? Do they live here? Why these monuments? Here's a picture here, and one of their symbols is the obelisk. That's supposed to be the phallic unit, which represents some kind of symbol for the gods. Here's George Bush and his father and father's father, members of the Skull and Bones, the Death Head. Just saying. And here in this book, A Mysterious Monuments, here's another character that's becoming quite popular lately. They tried to put a statue of this guy in the Oklahoma State Building and had to move it to Detroit. And you notice the 5-pointed star on his head and the Statue of Liberty fire flame on top of his head. And if you go look at Madonna and Lady Gaga and Beyonce and Katy Perry and a lot of Grammys or Super Bowl halftime or Olympic openings, you're going to see symbols like that. So my point is, what's going on? And here in Memphis, Tennessee, Rock Hard Cafe is a gigantic pyramid building. Look at the guy's hands. So as I keep saying, the symbolisms are everywhere. Here they built this one building in Dominican Republic. Now on the top it looks like a Mayan pyramid where they sacrificed people, chopped off the head and threw it down the steps. Inside this building, it's been said, there are long corridors with nothing but cells on the left and right, apparently for people. And apparently there'll be huge executions. More statues from around the world. So what does this stuff have to do? There's the Knights of Malta symbol, another secret mystery school of Babylon. Notice the light on top of that building in Dominican Republic in the below there. So why did they build these buildings? What are they preparing for? Here's a Masonic lodge. Notice the snakes on the columns in the rear, and the bird there. So who are these aliens? Why were these old buildings built? That one is the Pyramid of the Magician, the Uxmal Pyramid of Mexico. Here's one, the ancient Uxmal period of Mexico. Thousands of people were sacrificed in blood rituals. And then they built that one in Dominican Republic, built by the Catholic Church, by the way. They don't allow anybody inside, but the people who have been inside said there were long columns with bars on the doors, windows you could look through. So it looks like a gigantic sacrificial facility to be used what time? Because I can see from my research that the world is preparing for something. And biblically and prophecy-wise, people who do not swear allegiance to Lucifer a medallion fell at Burbank, California City Hall. See the sun in the background behind the man? This is a lot of communist symbols. So we know they're trying to, according to this book here I've been reading, and it's quite interesting. I've been reading it some more. I've been making videos on this. But they do want to make a transformation of a world with freedom, like the Constitution and other governments around the world, where the people elect their officials and the officials work for the people. They're trying to do a 180 on that. And take it to a communist-style government where the state is supreme and the people are slaves, and the state is actually the god. And then they got these stones in Alberton, Georgia. I went down here to see this. the USA Georgia Guidestones. And it says they want to have a world population level of 500 million and maintain it at that level. So I guess 6 billion, if there's that many people on the planet, have to go. And again, what's that have to do with this alien information when the people who are controlling our world, building these monuments, these buildings, and even like this one here, look at these statues they're building, or that exist. Who are the aliens that are abducting people? Here's an old, ancient, evil church, I guess, but look at the symbol on it, the skull and bones. In Ries de Chateau, France. And apparently a lot of stuff is going on current. New design buildings, something to be another Tower of Babylon type building. See the spiral inside? Look at this naked lady with the snake. The guy on the ground. The snakes with the crowns on their head. Strange. The Reichstag building in Berlin, Germany. The occultism symbols are everywhere. See the rays in the back like a big sun? Reichstag reborn from tortured past. Here we have Olympic Stadium in Tokyo, Japan. Includes circular zuggernauts spiraling into an obelisk. So the obelisk is the phallic symbol for these Luciferian cults. Isis, Osiris, and the sun Horus, who is represented on the US dollar bill. I'm sure most people have seen this, but that's Egyptian on the US dollar bill. The pyramid with the eye, with all the movie stars doing this. What's up? And over here, if you count the stripes on the emblem, is 13. The stars, the feathers on the bottom, the leaves on his claw, the arrows in the other claw. You're going to see 13, 13, 13, 13, 13. 13 is everywhere, which in the tarot card deck is the death card. And on the front side, on top of this little one here, right here where this finger is, on the side, there's a little owl perched. Right there. On that little loop right there. So if you go look it up, you'll see a little owl perched. And other symbolism. So my point is, if these aliens exist, and throughout history it appears we have evidence of it. And in Tex Marr's book on this page it says here, Illuminati architecture as global battleground. So how does this involve these aliens? World Financial Center and Winter Gardens, Battery Park City, New York. Look at these buildings, and this also includes 911. See the two towers? If you examine the architecture of these buildings, there's similarity with the Egyptian information. So back to the book. So when I'm reading this book and I'm hearing these things, I have to think of that stuff. What does it have to do? How are they connected? They are connected, in my opinion. I mean, we can connect it to the US dollar bill. It should have people screaming at the top of their lungs, saying, what the heck is going on? So anyways, back to the book. Jessup is still talking about these structures that were built. And how did they move such big stones? Let's take a look at some of these great monoliths and note their size, their geographical distribution, and where possible, something of their age and in any other details which stands out. Again, I'm tying this stuff with Jessup's conversation on the pyramids in Egypt. Apparently, somebody wants to bring about a return to the Golden Age. And remember, back then they had pharaohs and Caesars, kings, and the people were nothing but slaves. And at the whim of the king's desire, anybody could be beheaded. God forbid you said something negative and somebody heard you. And then you got that building in Dominican Republic that looks like a sacrificial pyramid from the Mayans on top of a gigantic building built by the Christian church in Dominican Republic with a long hallway and cells and doors all the way down both sides. What's going on? So anyways, Jessup's postulating how these big stones could have been cut and moved. The massive work at Sacsayhuama seems to be immediately between the extremely old and the more immediately pre-Inca, and may very well be an initial work of those people who were last in the area, before the Incas, and whose work the Incas inherited and used. The alien says, rope of that day was so crude as to even be negligible, lacked strength. The LMs, the Lemurians, built this before deciding to go undersea. They were too puny, these aliens were too puny, to withstand an attack such as the one received in the Great Bombardment prior to building it. Inca and Mayan peoples did not know the use of the wheel in any shape, form, or size at all, so they could not have moved such great masses, huge masses. Now, the other alien says, not so, Jemmy. One by one they were lifted, and only one face was matched at a time with force grips. So apparently some kind of force field that was called force grips. Or the strong freeze. These are the key words I want to pay attention. Maybe I can get a clue onto the technologies. Like Nikola Tesla's seemingly ingenious ability, intelligence. Where when he was older, he would go on stage and said, hey, I'm not a genius. I don't think these things up. I have visions. I have dreams. I see them right in front of my face. I hear voices. And if we go over Helena Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine, Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, and so many other books I'm going to go over, that is exactly the case. When they're communicating with these interdimensional beings, demons, ghosts, masters, whatever you want to call them, are they these invisible beings who in this UFO book says they can go into a state called stasis and you can't see them, but they're there? Could they have been feeding information to we, the human race? Meanwhile, reading this book, continuing on. My little marker's falling out. My highlighter. There's more evidence that they are intentionally, with drugs and other applications in the school systems, from grade school right on to the universities. And I've watched the cartoons that they show kids and seen some crazy things. And we all know about the current TV program that is just ludicrous. It dumbed down. It's insulting to the human intelligence. I know I'll probably make some people upset. But, you know, you got things like Family Man, The Simpsons, with all the occultic symbols in those programs. Many videos on YouTube show this stuff. So again, who are these entities who are abducting people? Apparently have flying saucers, gigantic base ships that black out the sun, and if a bunch of people see it on the ship out to sea, they have to abduct all of them, for fear that the public might become alerted to this reality. So not so, Jimmy. One by one they were lifted, and only one face was matched at a time. Using the force grips or the strong freeze, simply making ship to move back and forth, each thusly now appears to have been ground between each, which, as you know, and could not work, for the force freeze doesn't grip two huge ones and rub them, but two were gripped. Both would be forced to move with the ship back and forth simultaneously. Thus roughness could be between the two held. So like polishing a lens for glasses, you can only make glass by polishing it with other glass, if you didn't know that. So those stones on those gigantic monuments were placed on each other, apparently. Stones that you can't put a razor blade in between the two stones. The reason for that, according to these aliens here, whoever they are, is they would rub them back and forth. Just like how they make glasses. So that they would match exactly. So they would grind them together. So they built those big monumental buildings, according to this source. However, if these huge stone blocks were force cut by force cutters, then end to end, side by side, they would match perfectly when cut from the same quarry. Both ways were used. So the other way they did it is they have these force cutters, which I call maybe some kind of laser beam. And when they cut the stone out with the laser beam, obviously the two pieces would match together with one cut. So he's saying they were using that also for these big monuments. When cut from the same quarry, both ways were used. A shortcut later used was rock welding. And that's another idea I had, is we all know rock actually can melt. You just have to look at volcanoes. And so what makes rock melt in a volcano? I've been thinking about this quite a bit during my research over the years. I am a techie kind of guy. And it is my opinion that in the earth there are electrical currents. Just like an electric stove where the red thing on the top, the grill, gets all bright red because a current is going through that metal. So electrical currents do exist in the earth. And apparently I think that's what causes the melting of the rock, and pressure buildup causes the rock to spew out. So it's all done by electric and maybe pressures. So we live on an electrical planet. And they're building all those HARP transmitters. Directed energy beam weapons, apparently. Sky spraying heavy metals in the clouds, which apparently is a great assist to any electromagnetic activity. You can see the ripples in the stuff in the sky they're spraying. Just makes one wonder what the heck is going on. Rock welding, i.e. molecular electronic field blending, there you go, just what I said, was used as the signs of the Great War approached as an emergency speed-up measure. So they knew a Great War was coming. And here we are today, March 2016, with apparently all the governments of the world getting ready for a World War III event, and they have all their fancy high-tech weaponries in place, beyond most people's comprehension. I talk to people out there, and they're oblivious to any of this. I try to get them to look up and see the sky spraying. They won't talk to me. I mention mind control. They laugh and say, go see a psychiatrist or go back on your medication. When you can watch the TV program for kids, or even adults, Texas Rangers, Longmire in that other program I've been watching. The paranormal symbolism is there completely. If you just look behind the characters on the wall or on the tables and stuff, you see these symbols, and I'm catching them all the time. I'm getting quicker at it. Quite bizarre. So back to this book. The stones making up the corners of the re-entrant angles, or this lower tier, appear to be dark basalt, heavy, hard, and rugged. They are so large that they dwarfed a man on horseback standing beside them. This is Jessup, Professor Jessup talking. Some of them are about 12 feet high at the base and 18 to 20 feet high. They are estimated to weigh about 200 tons each. Mankind, or at least we the people, we're not privy to the secrets of the initiates of the Masonic lodges, Illuminati, witchcraft people, Zionist Jesuits, Bilderberger Group, Bohemian Grove, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Club of Rome, and the thousands of other secret organizations of Lucifer worship. These kinds of characters are apparently part of this whole thing. Let's look at a couple more pictures. Saying you have this conversation, and me doing these videos assist me in gradually increasing my theory of what is possibly going on. The Global Peace Center. I've learned one thing. Whenever they say one thing, you have to twist it around backwards. Everything that comes out of apparently, the devil's mouth, Satan's mouth, is a deception. That's the rule of thumb. Everything is the opposite of God's 10 Commandments or Jesus's philosophy of treat others how you want to be treated. These evil folks, these predators, these people, apparently, according to the Bible, who were cast out of heaven, which to me, obviously, is another realm of existence, like this earth is a realm of existence. So they got this gigantic peace center, majestic in its simplicity, revolutionary as a political metaphor. The Global Peace Center proclaims global renaissance, a new epoch of time enduring peace and humanity. So when they say all those nice things, you need to think the opposite while they're investing all their money in such a structure. Outside the city limits, you can see the city in the background. So my point there also is somebody is going through a lot of great expense preparing for something. Here we got the United Nations Secretariat Building, New York, built after Egyptian principles. Here we go. The United Nations building is built after Egyptian principles, according to this writing here. There's another Egyptian symbolism. And we got the Egyptian Eye of Horus on the dollar bill. And here's my friend I talk a lot about. We're going to go over her material. Helena Blavatsky, part of the Theophist Society, Rosicrucians, the Kabbalah. Notice the SWAT sticker, the crown, the snake eating its tail, the six-pointed star, which is on the flag of Israel. And Helena Blavatsky wrote some nice big thick book think one is called ISIS and the other one is Secret Doctrine. And she got all her information from masters, interdimensional beings. Demonic statue at Unity Temple, Oak Park, Illinois. Why do the powers that control our world build these things? The Beth Shoham Synagogue in Philadelphia, a pyramidal-shaped synagogue for the Jewish people. Not quite sure, but it looks like dragons on the top of the building. A bite out of the apple, you know, Apple computers? Isn't that kind of odd? Isn't that a reflection of Adam and Eve and the snake giving them to Apple? The symbolism is everywhere. Elk Grove, California displays its logo and sign out its plant. So that bite out of the apple can only mean one thing. We take all this into context. The stone face of the goddess ruling over Europe is seen in this revealing sculpture in front of the European building in Brussels, Belgium. That's kind of creepy how those two guys are kind of embedded underneath her. You think? And of course, if you know anything about the Bible, when Moses brought the Hebrews out of Egypt from slavery, and then he went up to the mount to speak to the burning bush, apparently, God, to get the 10 Commandments. And he came back down the mountain. All the Hebrews were having a drunken orgy, had collected all their gold and built a golden calf. It angered Moses that he smashed the 2 tablets and had to go back up the mountain for 40 days to get 2 more tablets. Apparently, the symbolism of the people who are ruling our world are using this golden calf, even Wall Street, as we all know, for money. See the money? And according to the Bible, the money is the root of all evil. And the money has the, can't make this stuff up, the Eye of Horus on it in the Egyptian pyramid. More cows. We'll get back to my other book on UFOs. Just trying to say, this seems to be, that's Egyptian old hieroglyphics. The great columns in the old buildings. The bull. The lion. All right. Back to this book. So when I'm reading this book and I think of that stuff, and I think of the people who are running our world and building FEMA camps, buying 450 million hollow point bullets, and enacting legislation to take away our rights, our freedoms, our property, using issues like biodiversity, sustainability, global warming, climate change, overpopulation, etc., etc., etc. And all the terror attacks. And again, you're going to be surprised when I read this book. It completely explains that the Hegelian dialectic, the Hegelian principle, is to create events so that you can achieve a situation in the future. So apparently, the powers that be are creating the terrorist events. 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing, and using crisis actors, Sandy Hook and other incidences, Boston Marathon bombings, over in London, all over the world. I've been doing my research. This Hegelian dialectic, the Hegelian philosophy, and it's explained more in this book. I'm continuing on reading it. So then I think about these apparently creatures that live in the oceans or underground in this book. It just makes me wonder. And then they talk about a big war here. I just said here, rock welding, they were putting these vast stones together for these monuments. So I am tying the whole thing together. Molecular electromagnetic field blending was used as the signs of the Great War approached, as an emergency speed-up measure. So they knew this Great War was coming. All right, back to Jessup speaking, the publisher, author, who was, his career was an astronomer, professor, teacher, and he had went to different places around the world, investigating old Mayan temples and facilities, working for corporate companies, investigating trees down in the Amazon to make rubber from. So he wasn't a dumb guy, and he wrote several books on UFOs. He was an investigator. And they did find him eventually dead in his car with a hose from his tailpipe routed around through the window to asphyxiate him. A lot of people say he was murdered. All right, reading some more here on the book. The stones making up the corners or reentrant angles of this lowered tier appear to be dark basalt, heavy, hard, and rugged. They are so large that they dwarfed a man on horseback. We read all this. Some of them are about 12 feet square at the base, 18 to 20 feet high. They are estimated to weigh about 200 tons. So seeing these pictures in Tex Mars books or Anthony Sutton's book, America's Secret Establishment, my conversation about Helena Blavatsky, Albert Pike, and all these other mystics who were into witchcraft and Kabbalah, communicating with masters, you can kind of put the picture together. So I think I'll read a little more here. Jessup says, the intermediate sizes, some of them weighing 10, 20, and 40 tons, or more, had to be picked up and put approximately into place, pushed back and forth until they ground themselves into their individually fitting contours. This was no mere chore. It is inferred that means of handling must have existed which made it easy, or at any rate possible, to swing these stones up and around and shove them to and fro against terrific friction, while pinching between their adjacent neighbors. Such power would tax any modern machine or power plant and require an installation of generating equipment sufficient to run a city. It seems plainly obvious that some other source of power existed. The alien says, aluminum and non-metallic metal has and is now being made to float in a force field. 1948 Cyclotron, 2,000 watts, New York State. So apparently the aliens are aware that the powers that be that rule our world have advanced technologies that we the people are not aware of. So with that, I'll end this video. I've got more reading to do, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I realize it may be a little boring listening to these details, but I think if you put them into context, it might help all of us understand what's going on and ask questions. Why would they put the symbol like that on the dollar bill? Why would they put a little owl on the perch? You can almost see it with this camera on this video. Where my finger is, you can see the little corner of that one on the top. And if you look between the one and my finger, you'll see a little owl sitting there. And all these monument buildings to these strange-looking creatures. Many of these buildings very old. Look at that picture. Look at this picture. What are we talking about here? Why some of the modern buildings built the same way? Those would be the gleaming new city of the Illuminati. Here we go, connecting the dots again. Remember, this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. And I do believe the UFO alien things are tied together. They even discuss in there, those people who are editing Jessup's book, the technologies used to move those stones. Ivan Sanderson, in his book, Invisible Residents, and many other books, talk about the ships in the ocean going up and down the coast of the Atlantic and Africa, the Atlantic Ocean, like the Mayflower ship, seeing gigantic bodies come up out of the water, or flying saucers, or come upon them submerging and disappearing. Plenty of evidence that people have been abducted who spotted this stuff in planes, in boats, and on the ground. So anyway, this gleaming new city of the Illuminati. The gleaming new city of the Illuminati is being built on the oil-rich former USSR, Republic of Kazakhstan. Among the tremendous new buildings going up are the Presidential Palace and the University of Civilization. But the focal point of the stunning new capital city is the eye-catching Palace of Peace, there we go again, and Reconciliation, which its creators equate to the ancient Babylon's fabulous hanging gardens, one of the fabled 7 wonders of the world. So they're building these fantastic facilities. What about that one I just showed you in Dominican Republic? And speaking of that fabulous building of the ancients, one second. I started out this whole series, Freemasonry and Satanism, with this book. The Holy Bible, but a Freemasons edition. So on the inside cover here, look at the symbolism. The sun with the rays, Tower of Babel. I realize a lot of people have been dumbed down and not aware of what's in the Bible. This is a Freemasonic symbol. There's the candlestick, the Masonic symbol on top of the Bible, the place where they put their knee and swear allegiance, and the pillars here that you can even see in Donald Trump's condo in New York City. Everything goes together. So in this Masonic Bible they talk about King Solomon's temple and the citadel. So they're over there in Israel right now, where they have overthrown many nations and bombed the smithereens out of many buildings and killed many Arabs, and are trying to evict all of them, sending them to Europe to rebuild King Solomon's temple. But we were just looking at that building they're building over there in the USSR and trying to replicate something from the ancient past. I just thought I'd look and see if I could see it here. The famous Hanging Gardens and the buildings. Look at the columns. Go look up Donald Trump's mansion in the top of one of those buildings, and you'll see all these symbols. Which is weird because Larry Nichols on Alex Jones and with Lisa Haven talks about Hillary going on weekend trips to Las Vegas to attend witches' covens, witchcraft. And then I'm seeing all this stuff about the Donald. You go look up his condo in New York City. So he's apparently into the Mystery School of Babylon. Go look up his condo and see what it looks like. So is Donald a wizard? Is he a leader of the Freemasonic lodges? A high up? So is he a magician and wizard? And is Hillary a witch? And most people are aware that they both work for the same people. All this secret mystery school of Babylon stuff. And then remembering the dollar bill. And Horus, the all-seeing eye, the son of Isis and Osiris. And they're saying the threat in the Middle East right now and a threat to the United States is this ISIS. You think that's a coincidence? That ISIS is the mother of Horus as represented on this dollar bill? In the Bohemian Grove, they have a gigantic owl in California where a lot of our political leaders, Reagan, Kissinger, and Presidents Nixon and all those people, Bushes, photographed there. They go there every summer for a cremation of care. Throw a baby into a burning fire under this gigantic owl. Ship in gay men. All the men are in part of the Bohemian Grove are in long robes naked. And ship in gay men for sex. With the gigantic owl there with a burning fire in the belly where they throw a baby in, called the cremation of care. Meanwhile, on the $1 bill right above my finger is an owl perched on the dollar. And Arizona Wilder, in her interview with David Icke, you can look it up on the internet, talks about being part of the Illuminati that they talk about in this book with all these pictures, and that she was a head witch, performed in the ceremonies, where apparently these elite people, like the ones who attend the Bohemian Grove in California, that Alex Jones snuck in there and did a video, you can go look it up, but she said during these satanic witchcraft rituals, these seemingly people who we think are human shapeshift into some kind of reptilian beings, and the leader is called Pindar. You can listen to Arizona Wilder tell David Icke everything. I've mentioned this before. Anyways, when they do shapeshift into their reptilian form, they get quite vicious and attack a victim laying on an altar, viciously kill them, biting them, drinking the blood, eating the flesh. So with that said, and trying to end this video, I'll just show you two more pictures. The bearded and horned stoned devil watches over the city of Paris. So why would you have this horned devil overlooking the city of Paris? Or that baffling dude, and here's an even freakier one. We talk about these reptilians. What's with this reptilian character in a robe? And apparently, according to Arizona Wilder, they can shapeshift from human form. And then more stuff in this book, if you want to get it, it's fascinating. More Egyptian symbology. If that's King Tut, whoever it is, but look at the snake on the top of his head. I just want to know what's going on. Why do they have one of these things on the city squares of every town all over the country, the world, in front of the Vatican? That's the phallic symbol for Osiris, who was apparently sliced up into 17 pieces by his brother trying to take control of his kingdom. Isis, his wife, searched the world to find his body pieces and put them back together, but one piece was missing, the phallic. So that's the symbol for Horus. And again, we're talking about the case for UFO and aliens. On all these buildings, ancient monuments, are these interesting looking creatures. Then they give us Dark Veda. Are they trying to tell us something? Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.